our procurement people are often asking for funds. They're trying to get on the agenda of a board of directors meeting. They are asking for resources, and the person they speak to will then make that case on their behalf. So they need to learn to tell a story, the chance it'll get communicated.
The ability to be memorable and to have the message keep the deep truth, as you said, intact. And sometimes the deep truth has a call to action of, here is a story of why another company didn't do this critical thing to manage this risk, to seize this opportunity, etc. And our ability to put that onto a PowerPoint is reinforced and taught. Our ability to tell that as a story that's retold intact with some of the same feelings evoked, because the bullet points often don't evoke the feeling that we want, but the stories do. Thanks for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. Today, we have the pleasure of James Marland joining us. James is such a storyteller, and I mean that in the most wonderful way, because it is a style of communication that sometimes people think is outmoded or something, and they couldn't be more wrong. James, thank you so much for joining, and I love this idea. Somebody challenged me, like, are storytellers made or born? And how did you build your skills as a storyteller to become literally one of the best ones? When I asked who's the best storyteller, I had several people say, oh, you need to talk to James.
So you've got your question there, are storytellers, are they made, or can it be something you can learn? And I always say, Sean, actually, as a human being, we're all natural storytellers. It's just that a lot of us have it beaten out of us by our jobs, our corporate world. So really, we're asking people to return to their human roots of storytelling. All cultures in all times have based their knowledge around transmission of knowledge via stories. So we all do it. I mean, the simplest case, how do we tell our children to be honest, not to lie? Well, at bedtime, let me tell you the story of the boy who cried wolf. And our kids like the story, and then that's how we teach them not to lie. Now, we could give them like a bullet point presentation or just yell at them, hey, tell the truth. But you know what? This idea of wrapping what I call a deep truth in a story is a super powerful idea.
Superpower indeed. I love the way nobody sits their kid down in front of a PowerPoint presentation for how and why the pain points and value points and key drivers and KPIs of telling the truth. You tell a story.
And likewise, no kid ever says to their parents, hey, Dad, tell me some facts. They say, tell me a story.
And then through the story, they may have questions of, well, why? And that's when you know they're actually really engaged in the story.
Right. And then the idea of the story is a transmission vessel for this, what I call deep truth. So another example, which I used early in my storytelling career, is from the Bible, where Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, we all know that story really well, and that story is to introduce the idea of who is my neighbor. The answer is often the least likely person. And Jesus tells this story, if you read it in the Bible, the book of Luke, in answer to a question, because someone asks him, hey, Jesus, so who is my neighbor? And the very next thing that Jesus says is, there was a man who went from Jerusalem to Jericho and he fell among thieves. And it's the idea of using a story in answer to a question that's really powerful. Of course, that story is still the test of time. It's thousands of years old, and everyone in the Western world tells it. So again, another key idea there, Sean, is don't think that storytelling is a sit down, I'm going to tell you a story, are you ready? No, it's a natural part of conversation, especially powerful that you can tell stories in answer to a question, as I've been doing already at this point.
Absolutely. And stories have this beautiful ability, sometimes like a terrible game of broken telephone, but sometimes beautifully retold and they stay intact. So the fish doesn't get too much bigger or too much smaller. And in business, there's so many times where the way stories are retold by somebody else without you are so, so important. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so the idea that a story is as a mechanism to maintain truths through the multiple retelling is critical. And you hear it with the examples I've already given, which both themselves thousands of years old. But here's an example of why it's important in business to communicate. So I was in India last week and I went on a tour. And of course, when you go on a tour, you have to go to see the carpet guy, right? So I'm in there getting the full-on sales pitch from a carpet guy who's really good. He sells carpets. And it's a very good presentation and all the classic sales technique. Now, he's excited because he believes that the person he's meeting with is empowered by the carpet. Some people live by carpets. I do. But that's fine for that kind of technique. But in business-to-business communication, it's likely the person you're speaking, either face-to-face or the other side of glass, is not empowered to make that decision right then. So that full-on heavy sales process is not the best way to communicate. What is more powerful is if you can wrap your deep truth in a story such that it gets passed on in a subsequent meeting. The person that you are speaking to then retells it, as you said, in an intact manner, because stories don't get told incorrectly. Although a fish may get told larger, the story itself is told in a reasonably coherent fashion, and so it gets passed on. And so a deep truth appears in a meeting that you're not in. And it's particularly important for our procurement people, in a way, because our procurement people are often asking for funds. They're trying to get on the agenda of a board of directors meeting. They are asking for resources, and the person they speak to will then make that case on their behalf. So they need to learn to tell a story. There's a chance it'll get communicated.
The ability to be memorable and to have the message keep the deep truth, as you said, intact. And sometimes the deep truth has a call to action of, here is a story of why another company didn't do this critical thing to manage this risk, to seize this opportunity, etc. And our ability to put that onto a PowerPoint is reinforced and taught. Our ability to tell that as a story that's retold intact with some of the same feelings evoked, because the bullet points often don't evoke the feeling that we want, but the stories do.
Yes, in fact, the bullet points are actually designed to take out any kind of emotion. And we know as humans that we crave emotion. That's how we interact through jokes, through drama, and through poetry. That's what we pay money to go to those kind of events, right? You don't pay money to hear a bunch of facts read out or something.
Absolutely.
So we crave that. And when something is understood with emotion, it's more memorable. The other thing about emotion is that as the story is told, you can relive elements of it yourself. So I was speaking to a customer last week, and they were talking about a problem they'd had, and because of this, AP person had to go late after work because he had a problem running some kind of a job. And he said, and then he added on, and it was bad for her because she has an aged mum at home. And now, oh man, that's bad. And then, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about my aged mother. I don't want to be, leave her in the lurch for some stupid thing at work. And so, as he's telling the story in one domain, I'm thinking of it, my own mother, and then getting my own emotions. That's a very powerful thing that stories can do. So you're living it yourself. Again, it's a powerful way of communicating information because the emotions are now personal.
And I feel like some of the most beautifully honest and open expression of emotions and desires come from kids. I know my own kids, or even in my own childhood, I never reached for or asked for the book that was pure text. I reached for and asked for, and my kids have asked for the book that has some interesting pictures to go with it. And I noticed that you bring your authentic self and that you use drawings and pictures and so on in your work to help bring that story home. Can you share a little bit more about how the pictures, how the way that you bring the real authentic James to the stories that you tell and how you do that?
Yeah, so part of that is that, because, in the corporate world, you're expected to have slides. So I speak at quite a lot of conferences, and I have done this, and I say, well, got to send the slides 6 weeks at a time, all that stuff. And they might say, well, I haven't got any. Whereas, when I listen to a politician on TV or go to church, there aren't any slides. I mean, so poets, priests, and politicians, I would say, communicate without slides. So, but unfortunately, in the corporate world, we're expected to have some kind of visuals. So I make sure that the visuals that I use are obviously mine. So one simple way anyone can do this is just do handwritten slides. So just get PowerPoint out and the stylus and just write them out. Sure, it takes a bit longer, but everyone knows they're yours because you're handwriting. And you want to put a couple of stick people on there, even better. But the key thing is that when you're presenting this information, it's so obviously yours. It's your point of view, it's your belief, it's your story, it's your understanding. And people crave that authenticity. They don't want you to necessarily, not always anyway, to be a spokesperson reading the official company line. They want to hear what you actually think. The same is true actually in politicians. If politicians just come up with, well, I'll just read the statements of the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, that's not very interesting. But if they say, well, actually, this is what I think, then now people are listening. Right? And there's no reason why in business that you can't have that level of authenticity. And one way is getting away from corporate PowerPoints. So write your own slides. Literally write them out on the cursive.
The other thing, I guess, that comes along with that is there's a sense of notoriety and a sense of authentic source of where those things came from. And I know that you have a personal style of how you draw some of these things. And I see one of those. I haven't seen your name yet, but I associate with it. Oh, I know where that came from. And it's almost becomes a signature as well.
Sure. I mean, that's a sort of byproduct, really. I mean, like yourself, right? You're doing podcasts and so on. So you want to have your own style. And I know that you have some things with the podcast that has a style that's always Sean's podcast. It will do the little things at the start and so on, and the music and so on. So, you're trying to build a brand as a channel because you believe you have something important to say. It's a very crowded media world out there on LinkedIn or wherever else. And the same is true in any kind of communication in the corporate world is how can you differentiate? How can you get your message out there? And there's lots of ways to do that. I don't do videos, but people do that and they're very successful. So it's really a case of how can you be different. So on social media, particularly on LinkedIn, which really, let's face it, is by far the most important one for most people in business to business. I always say, what will stop the scroll? Right? So I look at LinkedIn on my mobile, like most people do, and I flick through, long list. Oh, stop. What? So what's going to stop someone scrolling through? And handwritten slides is one of those.
Yeah, it definitely stands out. When you're thinking about folks in procurement, in IT, these are often not the personalities from sales or marketing that are perhaps more practiced or polished in the art of storytelling. And sometimes storytelling can have a negative connotation for them, which is terribly unfortunate. Quite unfair, really. It's such a powerful tool to go and help convey even the departmental or the personal value from procurement, IT, and accounts payable. And all three of these groups, I find, have a commonality of a refrain or a complaint that they're brought in too late.
Right.
But if procurement or IT or accounts payable could share their value and how to work with them and how to make sure they're brought in at the right time or the right way so they can bring their best selves, bring the best value, how would you invite them to consider storytelling to help make sure they do get brought in at the right time?
Okay, so it's a good question. And talking about stories doesn't mean that you ignore data. So I have this data point here, which is from Gartner, and it says procurement people only get 17% of their technology requests done. 17%. Right? So more than 4 times out of 5, it's not acted upon. And so that's a tremendous, waste of time for one thing. It's disappointing. And, the important initiatives that procurement wants to do in a corporate world, whether that's a new category strategy or a technology project or some kind of structuring, they're not getting listened to most of the time. They're not getting active. And let's think about what actually happens. So, companies, your idea has to, live in the marketplace of ideas with other ones, whether that's for attention of executives or access to resources or access to money. And how you become effectively communicate your idea is the difference in winning or losing. And the statistic Gartner there says that most of the time we lose. So if we can get better at this, that's good. That's good for procurement. And as you said, the reason for that is that oftentimes we're up against marketing or sales who sell for a living. That's their job. So of course they're good at selling their own ideas. And procurement people, we're buyers. We're not really sellers. But buyers need to become sellers in this particular scenario. So, and storytelling is one way to think about improving your win percentage. So your win percentage is currently 17%. That's not great. So how can your initiatives get moved up the core priority? Well, by telling stories better. And as you said, in procurement, we think stories is an evil technique that salespeople use to smoke us, right? And I mean, there may be some. I mean, my carpet guy was pretty good at that, but that's not. But that's not really what this is about. It's about having an idea that you believe in. If you truly want to put it in front of a management committee, hopefully you do believe in it. So how can you communicate your passion for it, your emotion for it, such that it has longevity and is then talked about in the other meeting that you're not in? So this idea that procurement need to become, we need to be buyers, we need to be sellers to improve our batting average on getting our projects.
Yeah. And projects acted upon and other teams remembering us and bringing us in at the right time. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, people want to get promotions too, right? And they want to be seen to be effective in the corporation. But Apple's CEO is an ex-procurement guy, right? So head of the biggest successful company in the world, he's an old CPO, so it can be done.
Absolutely. James, thank you so much for joining, for bringing storytelling to so many people, and for sharing your wisdom and sage advice on how to become a better storyteller, how to think about it in a more effective way. James, thank you so much again. Can't wait to see you at the next SAP events. And for all of you watching, this has been another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.